Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Commander Bear, and today we're going to learn how we're going to make an artwork and use the SQUAD SDK correctly. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide to how to use the SDK with its most basic functions. Please note that the SDK, in my opinion, was meant to develop SQUAD and not make cinematics. Cinematics came a lot later in the SQUAD title, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your SDK correctly in order to support your work in doing some cinematics and different artworks that we're going to see today in this video, and that will allow you to express yourself very creatively and even edit details that represent yourself and your clans or whatever you really like to do in the SDK, um, in order to, pass your time and make something that you yourself truly made with this incredible game called SQUAD. So that's the introduction. I'm going to split this into different chapters. It's going to all be down in the YouTube scroll below. You can just skip chapters, even though I don't recommend it. I know a lot of tutorials has been outdated or haven't really gone into much details about how you can make static images like I'm going to show you today. That's going to be pretty much it. So enjoy the video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Follow, don't follow, subscribe, don't subscribe, doesn't matter for me. I'm here to show you how to use the SDK correctly and how to make your vision come true in there. So enjoy the video. When you open the SDK for the first time, this is how it's supposed to look like. I tried to reset all my filters to look as it just got installed. And I'm going to walk you through some presets you will need to have in your SDK in order to work on your files correctly and to work organized and not to potentially break the game in terms of the vanilla files you have in the SDK. So as you can see down here below, we have all those bunch of files. I'm going to get into that shortly when we're going to set up our own project, but for now we'll need to set up the SDK itself to fit our own doing. So if you'll go to the top left, you'll see window. In window, there's a lot of details about different viewports, different content browsers, like the one you see down here at the bottom, the viewport you see here in front of you that is completely black. So some of the stuff we need, and listen carefully here because this is important, are going to help us and be crucial to us when we actually want to present and make our artwork. So the first thing you got to do, press on window and go down to levels. Press on levels and it's going to open a window either in the middle of the screen or on the top right next to the world outliner. So what is precisely levels? When we're going to open our own maps, there's going to be a few levels that are going to appear here, and in each of those levels there's going to be different actors. We call items actors in the SDK that are going to be edited within that level. As you can see, we don't have any map currently loaded, so we have one level which is persistent level. It's going to be in every map, but when we're going to get into set up our own project, I'll walk you through about how to set up your own level so you wouldn't touch any vanilla files that are in the game. So that is the first window we need to open. It might even show up like this, so just drag it up there to the top right and set it at the top right. Let's go back to window and find sequencer. Sequencer is under levels. Tick that as well. It's going to open at the bottom. This is what's going to help us render our creation and pretty much have the directory and every cinematic preset we have here set up. Currently it's going to be empty until we're going to use it. So go ahead and just tick that so we can have it at the bottom side of the screen. Go back to Windows, and then if you don't have it ticked, because I know that my SDK didn't have it ticked, go to World Settings all the way down. It's like 4 under Sequencer, and press it. When you open it, it's going to open next to Details or in the middle, And this is pretty much the map settings, the world settings we're going to use. There's going to be game mode. We're going to need to use that later. Try not to mess with it though, because the stuff we're going to use it for is going to be very specific to the render. So that's pretty much it. Other than that, you can have another viewport if you want, add it on top so you can have another camera to work in. If you have double screens, I know I have 3 screens, so sometimes I put a cinematic camera viewport on one side and another content folder like down here you can see on the other side, and it just works perfectly. So if you want to mess with that, please do, but try and do that after the tutorial. So that's pretty much how you set up your SDK for the first time you're going to use to make artworks. Okay, after we have our SDK set up, we'll need to set up our new project. I want to work on a specific map that is in the game squad, and I want to load it in so I can use the beautiful map in order to manipulate it to my own needs and my own cinematic posing of the characters. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to choose our map. If you'll go down to the content browser over here, there's supposed to be content. We'll go down to maps and then search the desired map we want. Please notice there's some maps here that just like a forest down here that aren't really in the game, and they have master layers. We're not going to use them. Try not to. All those new map, proxy merge, all those we're just not going to use. We're going to go into official maps. For example, I'm going to go into Yehorivka because I've set it up already. And after we went into our specific map, we're going to go into gameplay layers folder. Gameplay layers folder is where all the gameplay layers of that map are located. So what you need to do is basically, it doesn't matter if you're trying to make static images, which gameplay layer you're using. You just need to right click on one of them. What I've done, I've went to Kaf Yehorivka RAS V1, right click on it. It's going to load for a moment. For me, the map is already loaded, so it's going to take a little bit, naturally, it's going to take a little bit more time for you to load that map while you right click it. When you right click it, you go up top to duplicate, and you duplicate it. Call your map Yehorivka tutorial. Of course, you can do it to whatever map you'd like, and pretty much double click it in order to open it. So you just duplicated that level. Let's double click to open it. Save selected. We want to save the map we just made. Alright, this is going to load for just a moment. Alright, so we got it loaded up in the editor. It's not going to load as fast for you right now. It's going to have on the bottom right shaders compiling. It's going to stuck your computer a little bit, so I would really highly recommend you to close any unnecessary program, especially Chrome or different games. If you want to use the SDK, it needs to run exclusively by itself in order to have it not crashing and not have issues. So when you load it in the map and it looks like this, and there's no shaders to compile and no distant mesh to, I don't know, calculate or whatever, you're going to see it like this. So the next step we're going to need to do is we're going to make our own level within the map. So if you've followed the steps carefully when how to set up your SDK, you'll go to the top right side and you see World Outliner. Go to Levels, and you can see that we're working on persistent level. If it's blue, that means we're working on that level. There's currently 3 levels here. There's Yehorivka Single Landscape, which is pretty much all the forests and stuff you can see in Yehorivka in this level. There's LL Yehorivka Midday, which is the lightning layer and other effects. And there's persistent level. What we're going to need to do is to press on levels right here at the top and create new. Once we create it, we'll go to select empty level and save the name as whatever we want. I'm going to call it tutorial level. I just made it. So while I made it, it's going to automatically select that specific level. If I'll go down to the World Outliner now, let's extend it a little bit. all of those different items, there's literally, I think, 5,800 actors, 5,800 effects and different props and stuff that are being used. All of those are used in the persistent level. Now, when I'm going to spawn in characters and stuff to my choosing, I am not going to want to see them. So if you want to make sure you don't mess around with any of those things, literally just go down to the bottom right, first of all, have tutorial level selected, have it blue. Go to the bottom right when you go to World Outliner, View Options, and only in current level. We didn't place anything in our level. That means this is going to be empty, and that's what we're looking for. So that's pretty much how you set up your level inside the map you just made. We made your Rivka tutorial, set up our level, and the next thing we're going to need to do is to add a cinematic level. A cinematic level, if you remember the sequencer we just made on the bottom left, is pretty much your own little set and filmmaking strip. So if we'll go down to cinematic up top here and add level sequence, make it tutorial, doesn't matter. It's going, oh, we just teleported under the map, that's fine, doesn't matter much. I'll show you how to handle the SDK in the next section. So what it's going to do, it's going to open down a little cinematic timeline here. It's supposed to be empty like that, don't worry about it. But if you go to the top right and you notice that we currently have a little item on the map called tutorial, this is our cinematic sequence level we made. It is currently inside tutorial level, so it's not really going to affect the gameplay world in any way. And that's going to be how you set up your own level, your own map. This is how you need to set it up in order not to mess up the vanilla files. You need to make sure that you're always at the blue here. When you relaunch your level, it's sometimes going to choose persistent level as the one you're working on. So you need to make sure you're on your tutorial or custom level you made. This is going to be pretty much it to how to set up your own level. Okay. In this section, what I'm going to show you is how to use the SDK to your advantage. What do I mean by that? How do you navigate through the SDK? How do you move around with it? So in order to move around the SDK and have your I guess, character look around, what you need to do is you need to right-click and hold on the screen in order to move around, look around the map. It's going to be a little bit buggy. It's going to be with terrible FPSs. As you can see, there's a lot of wireframe stuff here. We're going to talk about how we're going to remove them later on. So this is pretty much how you move. You move with your left. You look around with your left mouse, with your right mouse button. You hold it down and you move around your camera. In order to move, it's pretty simple. WASD. And you move around. Just look up and you can go up, look down and you can go down. It's pretty easy and not really frustrating. I think it's one of the friendliest programs there is, and you'll need to obviously get used to it a little bit. If you'd like to change your speed, if you'll go up to the top right, we're going to talk about this little section a lot. The camera speed is up here, you can change it, but there's also a little trick. You see how I'm moving? If I'll scroll wheel up while I'm moving like that, just frenetically, 1 second. If I'll scroll wheel up, I'm going to move faster. Of course, it's going to take me like multiple scroll wheels sequences in order to actually move quick enough. And if I'll do the same to the scroll wheel on the opposite side while I'm moving, it's going to go slower. So this is pretty much how I do it. I just use the mouse scroll wheel in order to increase and decrease my speed while I'm moving around the map. Of course, you can change your camera speed here and it will change it. I like to keep mine on 4. You don't have to. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay. Now that we've set up how to move around the map, we'll need to know how we're going to hide those wireframes and honestly all those text, and those are potentially stuff that can stuck up our preview and we can move with terrible FPSs around the map and it's not really fun. So in order to hide all those wireframes, you're going to need to press G. Remember, we're going to use this key, and we're going to sometimes, if we want to see different cameras in the map, we'll need to use G in order to see them again. So press G and it disappears. Press G again and it reappears. Pretty simple. FPS is actually a lot higher and you don't have all those wireframes cluttering your screen. After that, if you want to move around objects, for example, we'll go down to this little house. Remember, this house is in a different level, but we can still rotate it and move it around. Of course, after I do that, it's not recommended, but after I do that, I'm going to put it back in place while pressing Control Z, like every program. So let's say I want to rotate that shed. I pressed it, I left-clicked on it, and I pressed it. This is how you select that specific item. This is a prop, I would call it. This is a static mesh. So in order to move it around, as you can see, when we first press it, we're going to have this little arrows going up to the Y, X, and Z. You know, it's just going to go within those axes. I can move it up, I can move it sideways. There's also combined axes. So let's say I want to get the green and the blue. I can just move it like this. Pretty easy, pretty fun to control and maintain. Let's Control Z that and go up to rotate. If you look at the top right here, this is select and transform. This is the one we're currently using. We'll go one to the right. This is select and rotate. Move that around pretty smoothly, pretty nicely. It looks pretty good. We'll go back. After that, we got scaling. Scaling is to the right of it. You can scale your object as much as you like. Pretty comfortable, in my opinion. If you want to learn how to do those stuff on the fly quickly, oh, sorry about that. That shouldn't be there. If you want to do, that on the fly, let's say I just moved it a bit, and now I want to rotate it. Now I want to move it again. Pretty simple. So pretty much, you can press W to move that object around. You can press E to rotate it around. And you can place R to scale it around. It's pretty fun. It's pretty easy to control, and with more experience within this program, you learn how to manipulate the world around you pretty easily. Now, sometimes it's not going to move as smoothly as you want, or it's going to be stuck to a grid. What do I mean when I say stuck to a grid? If you'll see at the top right here, we have this little enable or disable snap into the grid. So when I'm going to move it, you see it moves a centimeter at a time. Let's say I'm going to increase the number of the grid. I'm going to move it, oh, that's a lot. I'm going to move it 10 at a time. So it's going to move within snap into that grid. Same thing happens with the rotation, one right to it. So let's say I'm going to rotate that. I want to rotate it according to the grid. 90 degrees, let's say. I can use that snapping tool and it will help me doing that. Let's put that back into its place and it's fine now. If I want to disable the grid, which is what I do, I just need to press it again and it will be deselected. This is pretty much how you move your object around and how you're going to maintain control of the SDK. If you're having any troubles within moving around the SDK, or you see those wireframes again, just go back to this chapter and rewatch it. In this section, I'm going to talk about different file types and different actors we're going to use and place them in our world to our liking. So in the SDK, if we'll go back to the content browser, go back to content, there's a lot of different content. Sometimes it's going to be hard to find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're going to go into blueprints and find those weird blue stuff. So in this little explanation, I'm going to tell you what are the types of files we're going to look for in order to make the project the way we want it. So if we go left, we'll go to filters. We'll go up to the top side of the filters, and we can see there's a lot of different stuff we can tick here in order to filter them out from those files. So what we're going to click out for now, for the beginning, is static mesh. Go back, do it again, and skeletal mesh. It's just one right next to each other. They're both going to have color around them. That means they're ticked, and active. So if we tick them again, you can see that every one of the files have a little color scheme under it that will show the file type. So let's say I'm looking for static meshes. I'm going to have it, I say cyan blue at the bottom, and if I want skeletal meshes, I'm going to have it purple in the pink, if you may say, in under it. Those are the two main files we're going to use. If we use different files, let's say like blueprints, I'm going to explain each one of them in a moment. Don't worry about that. Those blueprints are gameplay stuff, and they are not going to be of much use to us. So what are each one of those files? If we'll go to static meshes, for example, are like this building. This building is a static mesh. It doesn't have any actors. It doesn't have any skeleton. It doesn't have any bones that you can move around. It doesn't have any bones you can edit. So this is pretty much one big block that is controllable only by moving it like this. It's not, you can't really control it any different way. So those are pretty much static meshes. They are props. They are to be placed in the world and move around within, you know, your doing. There's nothing much we can do to them. I can't open this box. There is no lid. This is a big block with a texture on it. Those are static meshes. Let's say I want to put an A10 in there. I can put an A10 in there. This is just amazing. That's why I love the SDK so much. You can do whatever you want. Now if we untick static mesh and move to the next one, skeletal mesh. Skeletal meshes are meshes that have different skeletons characteristics to them. What I mean by that is that, let's say I want to put an AK on the map. It's going to look like a regular static mesh. I can't really move anything within it, right? There's not really bones I can see. I can't really edit it. But if I'll go edit it in a different window, which I'll show you later, I'm going to be capable to remove the mag, to remove the barrel, I think. There's a lot of stuff I can manipulate and move around in this gun because they're all different bones that are attributed to this gun. So let's say I want to look for a player, for a person. So I'm going to search USA, and I'm going to drag an automatic rifleman just to show you. And I can control each one of those bones in a different window. I'll get to it when we'll start to actually editing those specific files. Right now I just want to show you what's the difference between them and what you can do with each one of them. So this is pretty much what skeletal meshes are for. You can control the bones, you can move them pretty nicely and shape them to your liking, unlike static meshes, which are just like props. So this is pretty much for the skeletal mesh. Now, it's a little bit of an addition. It's not going to help us in this tutorial, maybe in the future ones, but blueprint classes are some sort of placements or vehicles or pretty much anything else you can interact with in the world and is playable and have a lot of things attached to it, like effects, skeletal meshes, static meshes. It has, let's say it's an ammo crate. All right, so let's place an ammo crate down here at the center. Just a note, when you're using the SDK, each one of those things you're going to put into the world is going to load up. As you can see, I haven't loaded up beforehand, so now it's going to load up and work like this. So at first glance, it doesn't look any difference, but if we press G, we'll see it has a little box around it. It's all the attributes this ammo box has. There's a lot more details to it. We're not going to mess around with it, but this is pretty much what a BP is. It's a blueprint class. A blueprint is a thing that a player can use, and we're just not going to spawn any blueprints. Trust me. Every blueprint has a skeletal mesh. Every blueprint has a static mesh that you can use in order to simulate the world around you and make a nice scene. So this is pretty much a blueprint. We're going to remove that because we don't need it. I just wanted to explain to you what a crucial file type it is. So just leave static mesh and skeletal meshes in the editor filters, and it's all going to be fine. If you want to tick one and use it, just left click on it. Untick is the same thing. And that's going to be pretty much it for this chapter. Okay, in this chapter I'm going to talk about pretty much your cinematic setup, where you're going to place your camera, where you're going to choose your location. This is all up to you. I'm just going to show you the things that are going to be very important for you in order to set up your, let's save that, in order to set up your artwork correctly. So the first thing we're going to set up is our camera. The camera we're going to set up is going to be one out of two of them. There's two types of cameras. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you both of them. One is very recommended for, I would say, beginners in the cinema world. The second is to people who want to mess around with high quality cameras that have a lot of options within them. I would highly recommend you guys to just try and mess around with both of them, see how they act and how they react to you. So if we go to the top right, check that tutorial level is still ticked at blue, and go back to our world outliner. Now, if you go to the left side, you see we have modes. We'll go to basic and search for camera. Now, there is the simple camera that is just called camera. We're going to place it and start working with it. Now, you're going to get those errors a lot. The actually placed outside the bounds of the current level. It doesn't matter much to us. Don't worry about that. Once we place that camera, I can't see it, by the way. Once we place that camera, we're going to, and we select it at the top right, it's going to be selected automatically. It's going to show it in a little window at the right side. What I personally like to do, and again, we're going back to the Windows tab, is I'd like to set up a different viewport and change that viewport. If you'll go to perspective here, you can choose which camera and which viewport you're going to pretty much use. So I like to choose my camera actor, and when I move around and edit stuff, I can see how it will look like for the camera. Now, we can't see the camera right now because we don't have G selected. We don't see wireframes. We don't see stuff that aren't there. So if I'll press G again, boom, you can see that the camera is a little bit clipped in, but as I move it, you can see the other window is moving as well. So this is pretty much the basic camera. We can change its settings, and I'll show you how. But for now, I want to move that camera around. You see I've selected the window that the camera is currently selected in, and I'm moving it around. And I want it to look at that specific bridge. Perfect. Press G again, press G again, and that's pretty much good. I'm going to close that and put that on my other screen just for myself. You guys don't need to do that. You can just have it selected and see how it looks like in a small window, or separate the windows. Without further ado, I talked about that too much in my opinion. Let's go to the camera settings. Now we make sure it's in our correct level, and we'll go down to the basic camera settings that are going to be down here in details. In details, there's two ways. There's perspective and orthographic. We don't want to use orthographic, it's just going to look gray and not nice. So we'll go to perspective and press on that. We have field of view options. As you can see, it moves around at the corner right. Actually, I'm going to just select that camera actor, and I'm going to show you. If we'll move that around, we'll see the FOV options we are editing at the moment. We have aspect ratio, which will show the black sides and pretty much which areas of the picture we're using. So let's say I want to have it super wide. It's going to look like this, and I can just change it pretty nicely and enter some width elements as well. Under camera options, there's post-processing, lenses, and all those stuff. I would just recommend you not to touch it right now for the sake of this tutorial. You can mess around with it as much as you like. So this is the basic camera. After we messed around with the basic camera, I'm just going to rename it, right click on top of it, and edit, and just rename it to basic camera. Very nice. We can see it's in the perspective here. Now a little tip from me to you: if you want to get out of this camera and you don't have another viewport, if you'll go to the top left, you don't need to press on perspective and leave the camera. If you go to the top left, there is a little button next to the camera view. Just stop piloting an actor with a correct viewport. This one, the arrow looking up, and you'll get out of the camera without moving it. Now watch out, because when you're inside camera view, let's go back to it here, you're going to be able to move it around. So if you want to lock it into place, you'll need to be very careful not to move it. That's going to be pretty much it for the basic camera. So I'm going to press G again just to show you the differences between them. So the basic camera will appear blue on the wireframe menu, and the second camera, which is going to be the professional one, we're going to need to search for Sign Camera Actor. Sign Camera Actor is Cinematic Camera Actor. This is like a high-grade camera that is meant for filmmakers and has tons of other options. I was shocked when I've seen the amount of options this camera has. Just like a real camera, you can just switch cameras on the fly. So this is how the professional camera would look like. This is how the professional cinematic camera looks like. It doesn't much matter, it just to distinguish between them. Now, if you'll go to the bottom right side, I'm going to call this the other camera, rename it, let's call it Cinematic Camera. Perfect. Let's go into the screen of the cinematic camera. It'll look like this. Press G again because we don't want to see all the clutter in the background. And if you'll go to the bottom right, I'm going to move this a bit, you'll see the amount of options we have. Current camera settings. We have film back options, which are going to be, DSLR, 16:9 film, digital, Academy, 35mm, full aperture. If you know what this means, you will be shocked as well, in my opinion. If you know a thing or two about cameras, it's going to be like a candy, like you just entered a candy shop and you're like 80 years old or something. So you can change the sensor width, you can change the height, you can change the zoom itself. You can have it 200mm. Looking behind that, you can 30mm. It's all about the FOV. I personally like to go with the 105mm and just take the camera back a lot so I can have it really fitting to whatever I want to make. For this one, we're going to use 85mm. Not too complicated, just my own personal preference. I like the ultra wide, so I'm going to put the sensor width to 50 and the height to 20. We'll go 22, fine, or 20, yeah. Okay, so this is pretty much how you set up your cameras. You'll need to get out of piloting them, and this is how they both can look like. This is how you set them up, and we're going to go back to them later on when we want to render our scene. Okay, for this specific chapter, we're going to talk about how we're going to pose our characters and how we're going to place them in the environment and manipulate them to our doing. So a little bit to the previous chapter, if we'll go to one of our cameras and we want to see, let's say I'm going to place a model here at the middle of it, and I want to see how it would look like on camera without changing my position to that camera all the time, I can do something very simple. I select the camera at the top right, and I just have a little icon at the bottom left here that says Pin Preview. I pin that preview, and now when I deselect that camera, it will just stay stuck to the viewport unless I click it again. So that's a pretty nice way to see what you're doing from the camera's perspective. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So when we go to the content folder, what we're going to search for, I'm going to place a vehicle and a squad leader right next to it. I'm going to go to skeletal mesh and search that, and search for SK, which means skeletal mesh, underscore USA underscore squad leader. I'm going to place one that has glasses, let's say, right here, right at the middle of that bridge. When we place it, he's going to be T-posing a little bit. Doesn't matter because we're going to edit that position to our liking. I'm going to also place a vehicle next to it. Now, the best way and efficient way to search for stuff and items is going to search them in the search content and the type of file you're searching. Let's say I want a squad leader. I'm going to search for a squad leader and the skeletal mesh because I want to edit him. But let's say I want to find a vehicle and I don't know what are the names of the vehicles that are in the SDK or the name of the items. I'm going to need to search them manually. So for the vehicles, I'll just go to the content folder. Bottom left, there's vehicles. And then there's tons of different vehicle names that we're going to need to know what each one of them means, what's the M1126, and sometimes we don't have power for that, so we just need to search. So I'm going to go for the M1151, which is the Humvee, if you guys didn't know. And it's going to open a lot of folders, a lot of BP items, and a lot of stuff. We're not going to use them. What we're going to use is the M1151 skeletal mesh. This is what we're going to use. Static images of vehicles are, static files of vehicles are going to be debris and unusable stuff. So I'm going to use this one and place it right next to the squad leader. It's going to look pretty nice and fitting with the background. Now, as you can see, it doesn't really fit to Yehorivka because that vehicle is desert-like. Am I correct? Yep, I am. So I want to have that vehicle look like woodland. So the way I'm going to do that, the simple way I'm going to do that, is to set that vehicle right, I'm going to set that vehicle right behind this guy. Sorry about that. And I'm going to go to the bottom right side of the details folder. I'm going to select the vehicle, obviously. And you can have materials. When you see materials, you'll see those are textures. So I'm going to search for MI, just like the texture says, M1151. And then I'm going to search for body woodland. I pressed it, and it looks like a woodland vehicle. Same for the different factions in the game. If you look for the textures, you're just going to use different textures that are going to be fitting for the environment. So let's start editing our boy over here, the US squad leader. The best way to do that when you want to edit stuff that are skeletal mesh is right click on top of them and then go to edit right under the browse to asset, edit them, and it's going to open this window. Now don't get startled because we're just going to use small elements of that window. We're not going to, if you look at the top right, we have 4 sections split up for us. We got the skeletal mesh and animation and blueprint. We're not going to touch any of them other than animation. So go ahead and select animation. When we do that, it's going to open some sort of a model. This thing is going to run around, so just stop it. It's going to show us a preview model of a preview animation, and to change that, we're just going to need to go to the right side to preview scene preset. Search for our correct animation. Search for our correct model. So this model is going to be SK USA Squad Leader. Select that, and it'll just replace the old model with this. So now I want to have this guy say hi. So in order to do that, I'm going to go down to the asset browser where the animations is at the bottom right side of this editor and search for emote. Emote hello. This is an emote that's already in the game, and I'm going to put that there and move the little animation slide a little bit. Now this is the only time I'm going to move it. When I'm going to move it, I'm going to find a position I want him to be in. So this is a nice position I want this squad leader to be in. It looks pretty nice, pretty genuine. And I want to change a little bit of how his head is tilted and how the hands look like. So the best way to do that, I can click on each body part and it will give me that specific part. Now please pay attention here because I'm not going to show that again. The bones are going to look like this. You're not going to be able to see any of the bones you're using. You're only going to see the name and the rotation axes and all those that you're currently pressing on. So in order to see the actual bones, you go to the top left, character, bones, and selected and parents, which if I'll press on the arm, the forearm, I'm going to see all the bones that can move that forearm with it. So I'm going to put that a little bit high. I'm going to have this guy looking up nicely, and I'm going to put his hand a little bit to the side, form a little bit more inside, and let's say I want to control the hand, and this is where it gets tricky. Now sometimes when you select different stuff, they're not going to show up for you. So if you'll go to the left side here, which is the hardest way to search for a specific bone, and I want to move the index finger of this guy, for example. I'm going to go to the left side to skeleton tree, go down to BIP01 forearm, go down to hand. As you can see now, I can control the hand rotation. Go down to finger 0, and this is pretty much each one of those fingers has 3 parts. This is like the base of that finger, this is the middle of the finger, and this is like the last part of the finger where the nails are. And if you really want to edit each one of them, you can do that. This is all for you. This is all free for you. So I'm going to put him at the position I want him to be. He looks pretty fantastic. And now I want to export that pose to my liking. So while I finished editing this guy from scratch or used a certain animation, what I'm going to need to do is to go to the top left, create asset, create animation, current pose. So if I'll choose current pose, that will mean that this pose is going to be selected as an animation, which means when I'm going to move that slider, the pose is going to stay like that and not go back to the original. Let's just do that and I'll show you. Create pose, create animation, current pose, and let's save it with a name called Hi Boy with HI. So I did that. Now when I move the slider, nothing's going to happen. He's going to stuck in this position because this is the animation we made for it. It's not really an animation, but it's the easiest way, in my opinion, to do that. So after we finish that and we know what's the name of our animation, we can close that window. We'll go back to the character and select it. We'll go to the details folder and go to animation. Under animation, there's animation mode and use animation asset. This is pretty much with everything, vehicles and people. Animation to play. Now we're going to need to search for the animation we're going to play. We'll press on the none and I'm going to search for Hi Boy. As you can see, there's a little marker next to it. That means it's a custom animation and he's going to look like this. Looks pretty cool, isn't it? I'm going to place him right next to the Humvee. And now when I'm going to go back to my cinematic camera, I'll notice this is a little bit off of what I want it to look like. I can edit my cameras at any time I want, but in this chapter, this is pretty much how you pose and pretty much model your vehicles to your liking. So let's say I have that character. I can just pose that character however I like. So that's pretty much it for this chapter. In this chapter, I'm going to talk about how you're going to render your scene, and after you finished everything you wanted to pose in the world, how you're going to render that scene and push it out there so you can render it correctly and have it edited very nicely. At first, I want to go back to my camera because there's a few things I didn't really like. So I'm going to select cinematic camera. I'm going to change my zoom a little bit, my millimeter a little bit, and I'm going to go closer to that character. It looks a little bit blurry, I know. Don't worry about that too much. So if you mess around like me, you can see there's focal length and aperture. So I'm just going to change my aperture to behind the Humvee itself, and it looks pretty nice, pretty well. This is how I want this to look like. It looks good. It just basically looks good. So how do I render this specific image? How do I do that? For this, you'll need to listen closely and get behind my steps very gently, I would say. So I want to render my picture. For that, I'll need to go to the sequencer, you know, the sequence level we made at the beginning of the tutorial. We're going to need to open that, and then when we have a certain camera that we're going to use in order to edit that picture, capture that picture, we're going to take that camera from the top right, from the world outliner, the cinematic camera, and drag it all the way down to our sequencer empty space. We're doing that, and it's going to open the following timeline. Now, I'm going to ignore everything in here. I'll just show you how you can capture one frame of that, because this is pretty much meant for animations. This is the I would say the more complicated way to uh, take a screenshot, but it's also the best quality of the screenshot, and it's the best, in my opinion, it's the best way to take it. I'll show the shorter version, but I wouldn't recommend using it too much. So once you've done that, once you put your camera in the sequencer, what you're going to need to do is to, just to make things easier, you have 30 FPS here, set it to 12 FPS. Doesn't matter for us because we want a single picture. And just move the red and green arrows all the way down to the middle. When we move them all the way down to the middle, press Control and scroll wheel all the way in there, we're taking one frame. So this is pretty much the frame we're taking. Pretty easy, right? So before we click on render over here at the left side, we need to do a few things that will help us not to crash the program, because if we don't get rid of those things or make sure that those things are aligned, the program is just going to crash and not really render it for us. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go to World Outliner again, and this is when I'm finished everything. All right, I have nothing more to add. I just want to render this picture and have it on my computer. So when I go to the World Outliner now, first of all, I need to select Save All. All right, we'll need to save everything that we made in this cinematic level. It's going to save it for a moment. Go to the World Outliner, go to View Options, and untick the Only in Current Level because I want to see everything. So when I see everything, I have a gameplay folder. Now, if I delete this folder, nothing's going to happen. What I need to do is I'm going to need to press on it, press on gameplay, go all the way down, keep going down until I reach landscape. Shift, press the one above landscape. So pretty much I'm deleting the entirety of the gameplay folder so it wouldn't crash my program when I render. So press delete, yes to all. I know it's game breaking, and I've just delete that and it's not going to crash my program, but we're far from over. After we've done that, we'll go to World Settings right next to Details. Again, we're working on tutorial level. Pretty nice. When we go to World level, we'll need to go down to Game Mode. When we go to Game Mode, we'll see it says BP Game Mode RAS, or whatever game mode you chose to put your layer onto. What we're going to need to do is to search for just Game Mode. Now, watch out, because if you choose a BP, it's going to crash your game. So we'll need to go all the way down, and you can see Game Mode, just naked Game Mode right there. Press on it, and this is the Game Mode override. This is what we need in order to render our picture. So after I finished with that, I'll go back to my cinematic camera because I like to see how it looks like. It looks pretty good. I am ready to render this at full quality. So when I'm about to render that, I'm going to go to the sequencer. I'm going to go to the bottom left, render this movie to a video or image sequence or frame sequence. Press on that. It's going to open a little menu. For you, it's going to show AVI. So I'm going to change the image output format to image sequence JPEG. You can choose whatever you like here, but choose one of the picture ones because the AVI is just going to be one frame video and it's not going to, work for you. After that, I can change my resolution. I like to make it 1080p, the way it's intended. Compression quality 80, personal, personal way to do it. If you want to change your output directory, make sure your desktop is in English. Make sure that everything in your system is in English and there's no foreign language here because it's just going to corrupt your file. So what I've done, I've directed it to my English place if you have a different type of language directory. So I made sure everything is English. Go down all the way and tick use custom frame start and use custom frame end 30 to 31. This is the one we made. And that's going to be pretty much it. Capture movie. Press that. Save selected. It's going to open two little windows up top here, and we'll see how it goes.
Many unbearable hours later.
Okay, now after we captured our image, there's a few things I'd like to point out about when you're rendering the image. First of all, when you want to select your output, which is the thing I haven't said before, select this as somewhere you know, because you're just not going to find it pretty easily by yourself. So if you're using the special cinematic camera, make sure that your settings are on point, because sometimes, let's see, I can see that fine, but when I try to render it, the picture would look somewhere like this because my aperture was not on point. So I just did that again, and my aperture is on point. Uh, the Windows picture presenter is really bad at showing how many pixels are here. I assure you, there's enough pixels there. It looks pretty good as well. Um, the details are 1080p, so it looks pretty good. So this is how you make and render your image. Now there is an easier way to do so. I wouldn't recommend it because I don't like to use it. It doesn't show the full potential of the image, and some stuff are just not going to be rendered correctly. The other way is if you'll go to the top left, there's a little down button here. You'll need to go to high resolution screenshot, which you take a screenshot of the screen. And one is, I think, 720 by 640, two is 1080p, three is 2K, four is 4K, so on, so on. I wouldn't recommend putting it to 10. The image is just going to be 150 megabytes large. It's going to be wild. I like to put it to 4 and take a screenshot. Oh, press that immediately. And this is where I found my screenshot. It looks fine, but on different images with different different range, sometimes some parts are not going to be rendered because this is not really rendering. This is just taking a screenshot of your screen. So that's the easiest way to render. And then there's the best option, which is doing what I stated before. So this is pretty much it. Please note that if your renders are crashing constantly, it might be because you haven't done one of the steps correctly, or that because you have other apps in the background running about and just making it very difficult to render. This program takes a lot of GPU and CPU power, so I would really recommend you to run it alone, literally alone. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. I hope it will serve you well for the upcoming future. And go make cinematics. Go make awesome and cool stuff. And please, please, for the love of God, paste the links down in the description below. I want to see them. I'm also going to link to a SQUAD cinematic group run by Lordas. He's the guy who made all the SQUAD trailers. He taught me what I'm showing you here today. Great guy. I want to really thank him a lot. I don't know where to start, honestly. And this is going to be pretty much it. So enjoy the tutorial. I know it's been long, but thank you very much for watching.